95.7 The Game breaking news.
And this is according to Shams, and that is that the Toronto Raptors and the Indiana Pacers are in active talks on a trade centered on two-time All-Star Pascal Siakam for a package that is expected to include 3 first-round draft picks. So that is the story. It is not a done deal, but when you start to see what the return is and just process it through the fact that Shams decided to go ahead and put this on Twitter, that tells you that a deal is apparently, in terms of a framework, is in place, and they are moving toward the goal line of Pascal Siakam headed to the Indiana Pacers, which, by the way, has been the favorite landing spot for him all along.
Active talks. I mean, that's not a done deal, but active talks mean, all right, let's make sure that everything works. The active talks, they're probably both on the NBA trade machine, type in a way to make sure that that is going to work financially. And you look at the Pacers, they don't have a lot of big-time dollars. They do have Miles Turner. You got Buddy Hield on an expiring at 19.2. You got Bruce Brown making 22 with a team option for next year. Other than that, the Pacers are replete with low-price guys.
Right.
Which is why the picks would have to go.
And the takeaway for me is just that. And I think if you're a Warrior fan, this is what needs to resonate in your mind if you were hopeful of the Warriors getting Pascal Siakam. And I've been trying to say this for weeks when people are like, good, send him Wiggins. The Toronto Raptors were getting rid of Pascal Siakam at the deadline for one reason and one reason alone, and that is to gain future young assets. Now, there was never a time where the Warriors were going to get into this conversation without including Kuminga and Moody. And most Warrior fans I know are like, get Siakam, but don't trade Kuminga. Well, You can't do that. You just can't do it. The Warriors do not have the young assets to give up unless they're fully willing to get rid of their 2 young pieces, maybe even 3. Put Podziemski in there as well. And so if you want to do that, then maybe you could get Pascal Siakam. But if you're not going to do that, that's what Toronto's after. They're not out for your salary matchers. They're not out for Andrew Wiggins.
Right.
They're out for building blocks for the future. And so the Pacers are apparently willing to include 3 first-round draft picks. That's what the Raptors are after. And so Siakam and the Warriors has never been a perfect fit because you would have to ask yourself, what are you after here? What are you after? Because I hear people do this all the time. Well, the Warriors need to make a trade, but it's not like they're winning this year. Well, then there's no reason to go get Pascal Siakam.
Right.
If you don't think this year's salvageable, that's not the phone call to make.
Well, if you do think it's salvageable and it's going to cost you Kuminga, and let's just say you could get rid of Chris Paul, although I think Toronto would rather have Buddy Hield if he's in the deal. We don't really know yet.
Yep.
You're going to have to throw in 3 first-round picks and your lottery selection in Kuminga, who is playing great of late, and he's trending toward being a really good player. You bring in Siakam, you lose Chris Paul, and is that team good enough to win a championship this year? Because if it isn't, Klay's expiring, Siakam's expiring, and you lost Kuminga and multiple first-round picks, all for a 2-month hope. So I don't think that deal makes sense. And I'm wondering what Indiana will throw in terms of salary, because you don't want to trade Miles Turner. You probably do want to trade Buddy Hield. He's only making 19.3. You got to climb all the way up. They have Daniel Theus making almost 7, and he almost never plays. So
I wonder if you know this rule. I don't know this rule. What are the picks worth when it comes to the salary match situation?
Question.
I don't know. Do you know?
I don't know. I
want to look that up.
They are worth something, though.
Yeah, they were. Okay. Absolutely. I think so. They're not just. I don't think you have to do a full salary match. If there are picks in there, there has to be a financial value attached to them. I don't know that rule, and I would love to know that rule when it comes to something like this, in terms of what the Pacers might have to throw in there. But from the Warriors side, here's sort of what I'm thinking, especially after watching the long weekend of basketball on the road, where I would say that was a fun and nice win in Chicago, though you came out of it going, they still can't stop anybody. Then you had a surprising and fun loss in Milwaukee because they hung in there and Steph didn't play. And then you had yesterday, which made you want to vomit. So that's kind of the way you look at the weekend. And now add this in. Let's assume Siakam, this goes through, and he's going to the Indiana Pacers. Let's also keep in mind what happened individually in some of these games over the weekend. Jonathan Kuminga was fantastic.
Yep.
He was flat out fantastic. And the Warriors already, according to reports, were real hesitant to give him up. So, if Andrew Wiggins, if they're hell-bent on dealing him, even if they get almost nothing in return, and Kuminga is playing his way into staying, I think you add up everything that happened over the weekend. I'm certainly not saying it's likely. I'm simply saying that I think it became a little bit likelier that the names Klay and Dre could end up in a trade.
Wow. That to me would be stunning.
I agree. I'm still putting it at way less than 50-50.
Yeah.
But I'm just putting building blocks together of A, you lost games you should win.
Sure.
B, Kuminga played his butt off. C, Siakam's going somewhere else. D, you all seem hell-bent on getting rid of Wiggins even if you just get a song back. Put that all together, and if what you're going to say is Kuminga doesn't go, but boy, we really want to make moves, all I'm saying is there's a slight uptick in the possibility in my mind that in particular Draymond Green might be involved in a deal.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a couple of major deals. I don't think they'd be involved in the same deal. And I know there's been rumors of Draymond Green getting traded to the Lakers and Hachimura being involved and Vucevic ultimately being the player that they net. I can't remember who cited that as a 3-team trade.
It was Bill Simmons
with Chicago.
That out there, yeah.
So that's a trade. That one makes sense to me. Draymond going to L.A. and joining LeBron, and if it gets you Vucevic, then maybe that's something. I also heard rumors about DeJounte Murray in Atlanta maybe being a piece that the Warriors would want. And, you know, the Hawks are a team that have kind of been a mess in terms of how they're running things, so you might be able to get DeJounte Murray. Wiggins might be a part of that if you can convince them, like Steve was trying to convince us, that he's been playing better. And I thought he did play better last night. Wiggins showing a little bit more effort, a little bit more of the forcefulness that you want from him. And honestly, right now, Mark, if you're a Warrior fan, you want Wiggins out there playing well. You need him playing well. That way his value can rise from where it's been, which has been next to zero.
Yeah, I agree with you, although I don't know if a couple of games here or there at the end of January are really going to pique the interest of other teams. I just don't know. This has felt to me all along like something that is well known inside NBA circles and not well known outside. We're all sitting here with the same thoughts about Andrew Wiggins. We have no idea what the hell happened. All I know is he disappeared for February and March. Then he came back. He was kind of nice in the playoffs, and there was an injury at the end, and he's come back this year and looked like the absolute worst version of himself that we've ever seen. And from Kendra Andrews to Stephen A. Smith, everybody who's really dialed in the NBA circles behind the scenes seems to know what went on, but no one will tell, and I get that, and that's fine, but I believe that these things are related. And I would imagine that NBA GMs know what's going on. And so they feel, based on what I'm hearing, very hesitant to give up anything that matters for Andrew Wiggins.
Well, he might be a part of a bigger trade, or if you're going to send a pick out, then, and I know you can't send this year's pick out because it's already spoken for, only top 4 protected, but you've got future draft picks. And if you're thinking in terms of the way you think, which is the future of Golden State only extends as long as Steph Curry is here. So you're talking about 2 or 3 years. Maybe you do end up trading a couple of firsts in the future in order to get something back now that can be helpful to Steph Curry. Yeah,
that's, again, helpful to Steph Curry means what? Let's define that.
Draymond Green is what it means, in my opinion. That's why I don't think that he gets traded. The Klay piece is interesting because he is expiring, but what team would want to take on the rest of $42 million for Klay, knowing that at the end of the year, he can go wherever he wants.
Well, sure, but that's Siakam, right? Like, I mean, if you're going for a run, if you're trying to go for a run, you know what I mean?
Siakam 29, though, still playing peak basketball.
But if somebody thinks, hey, we could use a wing shooter 3-and-D guy for a title run, Klay Thompson's not a ridiculous idea. He's not a ridiculous idea. But Warrior fans also need to understand that his return would reflect that.
Yeah.
The return would not be about the name value of Klay Thompson. It would be an expiring guy that we want to get for a run and with no promises after that. And you don't get a lot for that stuff.
Right. And you'd have to find, and we went through the list of salaries before with Klay making 42. There aren't a lot of matches.
Correct.
All the guys making that much are number ones. Or, it's Kawhi and Paul George with the Clippers.
Yeah. Or
they aren't guys who are going to get dealt.
You could gather more than one person, though, to add up to that. So that's one possibility. But listen, again, I'd still put it at much less than likely. But that, to me, is the exercise. If I'm Mike Dunleavy, Joe Lacob, everybody over there, right now you got to define what that sentence means. Maximizing the end of Steph Curry's career. For, I think, a couple years now, we have automatically defined that as keeping the big three and potentially moving young pieces to give the big three even more.
Yeah.
Well, if this year a title run is totally far-fetched, which it is, well, then what does that mean? What does maximizing the remainder of Steph Curry's career mean? I think it means something different now. It doesn't mean, hey, all in on big three, and let's see if we can find more veterans to put around them, like, I don't know, trade Jordan Poole for Chris Paul. Okay, that's one idea. But if now becomes totally far-fetched, you're actually talking about the next 2 years. So you're not going to mortgage Kuminga for Siakam.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. So I wonder what Steph is thinking. When you say maximize the rest of his career, is he thinking this season? Or is he thinking next season?
Maybe they're thinking Wisniewski. Honestly. If you're
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yes.
If you're 4 below and
you could.
Klay's coming off the books and Chris Paul's coming off the books and Wiggins, you still hold out hope that Wiggins might be the player that he used to be.
I guess.
And at the very least, like you said, Mark, if you try to deal him now, you're selling low. Maybe you wait until the offseason when Wiggins is actually back. So if you're 4 games below and there's no deal at the deadline that makes real good sense, then you go full Wisniewski and you play it out, you play the kids, and then you get to April and May and realize, all right, Klay, will you take half? And what are we doing with the rest of our roster spots? Can we get better between now and next October if, in fact, there's nothing you could do at the deadline?